Welcome back to the Privated Podcast, where we spotlight extraordinary people and remarkable talent reshaping our world. Today, I'm joined by Shariq Salar, founder and CEO of Atrean, an AI native data platform built to deliver clear, immediate decision intelligence. Shariq has spent his career building and scaling companies, and he brings an operator's discipline to a problem many leaders face, turning scattered, complex data into trustworthy answers you can act on. With Atrean, teams ask questions in natural language and receive instant governed insights without the cost and complexity of traditional BI stacks or heavy analytics workflows. So thank you, Shariq, for joining us. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Federico. Glad to be here, and thank you for that kind introduction. It feels great to be here. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing great. I just come back from San Francisco, so I'm getting used to the rhythm of working from home again. So it's a whole different dynamic, right?
It is, and it's pretty fast-paced right now with everything that's happening in AI, don't you think?
Yes. I've been to many meetups and meetings there where they talk about how AI is pretty much changing a lot of the new startups, right? So people were talking about that there's so many greenfields like in 2000s, right? Where
hmm
there are so many new opportunities of things to do now with the tools that AI is providing, right?
Yeah, it's a whole new world out there, and I'm glad that I guess we're in the right place at the right time. In fact, in San Francisco lately, I've noticed, of course, the place always has its energy, and everyone's always about, building and being tech forward and being techno optimistic, if I may say so. But right now, I think it's a once in a lifetime thing to witness. I don't think you'd be going to any meetup which has to do with could be healthcare, could be policy, could be, governance or, defense. And all they seem to be asking is AI. How do I get more AI? What's happening in AI? Can AI do this? Can AI do that? And so as people who are building in this space, I think we're very lucky that, we're in the spotlight, but it's also a lot of pressure. Every time you walk into a meeting and you find two or three other people who are even thinking about the same things that you're building or in similar spaces, it's validating, but it's also it's very interesting. Yeah, it's a good time.
Yes, it's very interesting. I think people are talking about AI as if it's a mature thing. Everybody like feels they project that they know everything about AI.
Yeah.
They talk about prompt engineering, right? I don't know where I read it about this. Instead of prompt engineering, we should call it prompt alchemy because there's so many things that we don't know, right?
That's a good one. Prompt alchemy.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll get debunked as a pseudoscience someday.
Yeah, yes. I'm doing this thing with the vector database of generating this,
Right.
dimensions and doing
What do
this
you use?
RAG.
Pinecone?
I'm using I don't remember the name. It's a Ruby library, graph something. I'll look it up.
GraphQL?
No, it's not graph. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, anyway, okay.
Anyway, um,
Hmm.
but anyway, the we build. So I'm using PostgreSQL for a vector database because
hmm
already using PostgreSQL, so I don't want to like complicate
Sure.
the infrastructure. But um, you know, it gives us like 1,500 dimensions, right? But nobody knows what these dimensions are, right? It's like I don't know. It kind of works. It's magic. So anyway, that's where I am, and I keep asking everybody, like, what do this dimension mean? And they say people say, well, it depends on which LLM agent you choose or LLM engine you use, but at the end of the day, nobody knows. Yes,
Don't you think
that's
it's a really strange way to be when people who've spent 10 years or 20 years studying, coding and languages and data science and data structures and SQL, um, they're being made completely redundant right now because now you don't you don't really need to know most of that to actually extract value out of most of these things. So with most generative AI platforms or large language models, or even these new AI-based tools that everybody seems to be using, it's not the veterans that are getting the most value out of it. It's actually people who don't know how anything works, who are just able to instantly go and get results quickly. So you've got teams of engineers who are just out of college who are building really deep applications in different spaces that they don't really understand so fully, but they're just so quick and so fast with new AI applications. It's like a very different way of building.
yes. I was having this conversation about vibe. People talk about vibe coding in the Bay
Mm.
Area, right? And is pretty much what you're describing is
Yeah.
a product owner now can build a prototype using vibe coding, right? And I think that for that scenarios, vibe coding is great, right? Um, it's never going to be the same quality as a senior engineer could build, right?
Mm.
But if you're using it for disposable prototypes, that's great, right? Um, what I think that the AI doesn't understand is the abstractions and being able to plan ahead what you're building, right? Um, at least not right now, right? Maybe by the time this episode airs, it does.
Touche.
So I think that it gives the a lot of people that don't have the experience on how to build the stuff, basically, it gives them that ability, right? And even I've been coding for 25, 30 years. I don't know. For me, it also works because sometimes I have a JavaScript, script that I I know there is an issue there, so I can just ask the AI, can you help me fix whatever is going on here? And most of the time for syntaxes and things like that, it works great, right? Or write me a little script for doing this particular thing, right? And I don't have to remember about which instruction or which, I can just use the AI for those, menial tasks, right? So I think that, yes, I agree with you that it's empowering a lot of non-technical people or with less experience to build stuff, right? Um, but I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Because on one hand you had that, but now you have a lot of monkeys with knives, right, running around. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
and
dangerous.
yeah.
But do you also think, I'm curious, as somebody who's, been coding for a long time, do you think it takes away the blank slate in a sense, do you think it restricts creativity? Do you think in 5 years, if every developer is using the same models and the same platforms to code, do you think somewhere it homogenizes the process and takes away from the creativity of it's like if there was a canvas, and canvases came with set boxes and you only had to color between the lines, or you just had to point and click. How many different outputs would you really get? Doesn't that like kill creativity in a sense?
Um, well, um, as an expert on creativity, because I'm writing a book about creativity, right? I'm actually writing a book about creativity, but now
Oh,
that you mentioned it,
interesting.
uh, but I think it's like this. Um, part on the book, what we talk about is you need movement to be creative, right?
Mm.
Um, so what happens when you're alone with a white white piece of paper, a canvas, blank canvas, right? Most people get stuck there, right? It's difficult to get started, right? So sometimes we have this concept of rubber duck in coding, right? Where you ask somebody for help, they don't say anything, they just hear, right? They just listen. But that process of explaining what you're trying to do to somebody else, that
Right.
triggers like, oh, now I understand what I'm trying to do because I was able to sort ideas out, right? Um, and basically you say thank you to the rubber duck, even though it didn't provide any, significant value
Yeah.
to the conversation, right? So I think that um, having the way that I described AI is an eager person, right? An eager
Right.
creative, right? Um, it never wavers on the attitude, right? Even if you poke him or or you can be mean with an agent, and it's always going to respond with a happy face, right? So, or even if you ask for a stupid question, it's going to say, "Oh, that's an interesting take," but and it's going to explain why what you're saying is wrong, right? But having that positive energy, that positive attitude, right? I
Yeah.
think that rather than killing creativity, it allows us to be more creative, right?
Mm,
Um,
mm,
because the LLMs are average of everything and
mm,
master of none. So it is up to us to set the direction, to become the navigator, right?
mm,
And you can ask the AI multiple questions, or give me 5 options or 5 ideas, and from there you can get inspired by one, discard the others, and move forward. And the AI is not going to be resentful about any of their ideas, right?
mm. Interesting. That's actually quite an interesting take. I almost seem to think that in the future, most people will have a pair coder, formula with AI. So I'm not going to code alone, but I'm going to sit with you. But eventually, it's going to be my output, and maybe it gets trained along the way, on how you like to write code and how you like to solve problems. Yeah.
Yes, I think that that's where we're going with that. Mm,
Yeah.
as a the issue that I see is that when you're when you're building stuff, right, you're learning at the same time, right? But now if you delegate the building to the AI, then you don't learn, right? So um, you need to learn in order to guide the AI to where it should go, right? Um,
Right.
so understanding, and that's what I was talking about, abstraction, right? So um, when you build object-oriented programming, you abstract concepts and then into classes, and then those classes interact with each other. So you become a designer of that interaction, right? And when you are building with AI, it kind of builds classes based on what the AI thinks, but it doesn't have that concept of high level of abstraction. So I think it's up to us to define that, so the AI then can do the mechanical work of writing the code, right? Um,
Mhm.
and that's where I think that the senior people, the people that has experience,
Mm.
will be able to do that better than a junior that has been relying on AI from the beginning.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Do you also think, besides seniors and juniors within the development ecosystem, do you think it will also make um, software building available to completely non-tech folks? So we both know that there are really smart people that work in medicine, in healthcare, in finance, in investing, and oftentimes there's a context layer that's missing, between them and say development teams or between them and technologists. But if you take that away, if you take the need for that away, and if they can, with no knowledge of software or code, if they can just provide the context and pair code with an AI model, do you think they will be able to build solutions that are much more effective and long lasting?
That's a very interesting question. In short, I think yes. Um, I think that from ideation to to a shippable product of sort. I think that that gap is becoming shorter and shorter, and AI is facilitating that. Um, the I mean, I can tell the story of, my mom used to write code on a piece of paper, right? Poking holes so the machine could read it, right? And the there was one machine for the whole university, right? So you had to allocate computing time to actually go and process your program, right? And then you will get a result on another piece of paper. I mean, we're talking about, lots and lots of paper, right? But then you will go and debug the program based on the output, and then you will fix it, right? So the cost of debugging was high, so you will go over and over on the code, right? And then from that in the 70s, 80s, whatever, to now, right? Now that computing, you don't need to scale computing power because all our computers are much more powerful than they were used to be before, right? So now we have more computing power than we actually need, right? That is sitting idle there, is cheap, so we can basically be ineffective on the computing power because who cares, right? It's cheap and we can just use it to build things that help us solve things, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I am on that, right? So um, if um, if a doctor can see a problem and build software with an AI agent, maybe that software is not going to be efficient, but is good enough for what they need, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's right around the horizon. I think it's already happening. I actually happened to speak to a whole bunch of doctors in the Bay Area who were asking me, um, is AI going to do this? Is AI going to do that? I have these problems. And in the back of my head, I was just thinking, that day is not so far when you won't need to speak to a technologist about these problems. You will probably have some sort of healthcare AI or some sort of language model that just caters to you and will do that on your behalf and throw iterations and probably, sort of build you an MVP super quick and then you can test it out. I think, honestly, if I think about my grandma, for instance, probably, would have used a calculator at best, but she knows how to use a cell phone. She knows
Right.
how to text people, she knows how to call people and whatnot. And used computers at work, but now she can do a lot more than just that. And my sister now is doing a PhD in data science, and it's people from all walks of life have so much technology integrated in their lives already that they're slowly learning about, how to interact with technology in much faster ways. So you have, people who previously were so disenfranchised from tech usage, like in the 70s and 80s, I would assume if you worked at IBM or if you worked at, Xerox or if you worked at, JP Morgan, yeah, maybe you use a computer. But now, in the developing world, for instance, you've got people who are selling, food on the streets, who use UPI for payments, who've got cell phones. We have gig workers who deliver our food, who know how to use Google Maps. And this was all unthinkable technology for us, right? Like when we were kids and we were growing up, we thought, okay, is that what the future looks like? But I never thought that in the future, everyone's using technology. And people we didn't think would have access to this level of technology, and now I'm wondering in the near future, will we even be separate from technology? Will we all have like if I think about my cell phone, it's almost like a part of me at this point. I don't exist in isolation from my personal tech devices, my laptop,
Right.
my cell phone, probably someone's Apple Watch. These are extensions of them. So we're already cyborgs in a sense. And as you start integrating more artificial intelligence and capabilities into those devices, I think the outcomes that we're expecting from people are, like a combination of both of those. And I mean, 5 years ago, I could not have told you, what 2025 looks like. So right now, when I think about 2030, I just put it off. I'm just like, hey, let's wait and watch.
Yes, I I was thinking about movies from the 80s and the 90s, and uh where they have a problem or whatever. If you think about it, if they had a cell phone,
Yeah.
most of those plot lines would not compute anymore, right? Because it will be solved with a phone call, right?
Yeah.
Or and I think it's in Pretty Woman
That's
where
interesting.
they take the Concorde to go from New York to London to catch up
Yeah.
to the woman that it's taking the regular plane and whatever, and he's expecting on the other side. Uh, maybe it's a wrong movie, but but now you don't need that because you can do a phone call, right? And now you have Wi-Fi, or on the airplanes, right? So there's so many stories like that that it kind of doesn't work, right?
It's interesting you brought that up because do you remember in the futuristic movies of the 70s and 80s, if we're thinking like Stanley Kubrick, for instance, right? There's this approximation that in the future video calling is a thing, and that it's possible that you can just like look at somebody who's somewhere far away and you can have video calls with them. But it is that point in the future when video calling is available, but people don't even want to phone call you anymore. All people want to do is text, and the texts are getting shorter and shorter. So sometimes our visions of the future perhaps are based on some wishful thinking, and it actually does not pan out that way.
Yes, yes, I agree. I was watching the Orville, and this happens as well on Star Trek, right? Where they have a phone call to give them orders of, like, oh, you have to do this mission and whatnot, right?
Okay.
And I was thinking, well, it works for the plot line, right? Because now you have the general and the captain of the ship, they're talking about the mission and whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a good plot line, but that meeting could have been an email, right? So yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, and I was talking with a guest recently, Ben, and he's doing automation for your everyday chores. So picking
Mm,
up your medicine, your groceries, all that, you can send
mm,
your car to pick it up, so you don't have to go, right? Um, so you don't need a computer science degree to do that, right? You just you know use your phone and order it, right? So I think we're getting to that point where the functionality that this tool provides are becoming a higher and higher level of complexity than it
yeah.
used to be, and I think that's and lowering the technical requirement for the users, right? You don't need
Mhm.
you know you don't need to know computers to drive a car. You won't need to know any technical stuff to automate your everyday groceries, right?
That's very interesting. In fact, I'm actually looking forward to seeing what this is going to do for healthcare and drug discovery and pharmaceuticals and anti-aging. I think those are really life sciences. I think is like the most interesting space in which I think there will be applications of AI. I don't think so much of it has been adopted because like the R&D cycles are really long and it's generally deep tech. Um, but I think in the near future we want to see like a lot more of that happening. I'm super excited to see what's going to happen there. Are there any spaces that you're super excited about with AI?
Yeah, so I think that AI is becoming better and better on higher level of abstraction for problem solving.
Hmm.
So I'm looking forward to see how that's going to improve the quality of the code, right? Where eventually we might not need to code anymore, right? Or it's going to be, I mean, getting to that shift in paradigm. I'm looking forward to that, right? Where you can describe functionally what are your expectations of behavior, and then the application is going to the LLM is going to build the application as you need it, right? Which is going
Interesting.
to leave me out of work of as a software engineer, but but that's a future me problem, right?
Yeah. I don't,
Yeah.
honestly, I don't think it's just software engineers who are thinking about this right now. It's also people in governance and policy making and economics. There's all these people who read, 1,000 big books to be where they are and, spent, 10,000 hours to, like really learn a subject. And now here's like this little box, this, like that, probably fits on a pen drive, and it's probably going to give you better analyses and better decisions and better, it's just a question of how long you take to fine tune it and give it enough context. And I think everybody in so many different spaces is actually thinking, how is this going to affect, I'm just like, if I just glance around like LinkedIn or different forums, graphic designers you see talking about this, animators are talking about this, filmmakers, most people in creative professions are definitely talking about. So traditionally, when we thought about subjects in the humanities, like like the creative professions, since you mentioned it earlier, generally they were not as affected by big advances in technology. If something is made, it's made for their use, and it's made around their current needs and their processes. But now the kind of things that we're building in AI, for instance, if you look at the most recent models, text to video or text to image or text to voice, and all of those models, it bypasses so much. It's like how you said that meeting could have been a phone call, or that plot line is completely irrelevant. Uh, Ideating is now completely irrelevant. You can in the future serve 10 different endings of of a film or a TV series to, like, 10 different viewers. And I had a friend who just recently finished a book and a series of books, and she said, can you build me some AI to like write, like, four more editions of this, because I don't want the story to end. And honestly, I said, hey, that's actually a very possible use case. you know I'm just hearing so many of these, like, on a daily basis here.
we we've done something like that with my son. We were on
Okay.
the car waiting for my wife. I don't remember. We were like hanging around, right? And kind of killing
Uh-huh.
time. And kids get relentless in the car, right? Like, I don't want to do anything. I want to do something. So I I opened up ChatGPT and I said, please tell me a story of he likes this Paw Patrol, these little dogs
Okay.
that go and save
Hmm.
the day, right? Anyway, uh, and then I described the story that I want, and I included my son into the story, and then I included my dog into the story, right? And then I said, ask me questions so we can continue the story, right? And it will give us like a little initial story, and then we'll say, oh, and now it's the dog, or now we're going to this place, or now
Mm.
and then in a few minutes, my son was so engaged with that, and he was building the story with the AI, right? And now, a space rocket shows up, and aliens shows up, and he was, he started coming up with these different ideas, and it was so fun, so much fun.
That is so interesting. I think, how millennials and Gen Z were the first to, like, have a very strong dependence on, let's say, search engines and Google and, say, Wikipedia. So, my generation, I think we needed to learn things and remember things. And the generation after me, because, like, I see so many of my colleagues, they don't think they need to remember anything because they were like born Google native. So
Right.
when they were, like, in their teenage years or their 20s, they were just like, yeah, I could just Google that. I don't really need to know much. I think your son might be from the generation that is the first AI native generation. So it'll be interesting to see, like in 20 years, how they think about, because it's been around since they were a kid.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably remember before Google Maps, right? We had to use maps, real maps, to actually go places, right? Uh, and now with Google Maps, we kind of become dependent of it, right? Like
Yeah,
I wouldn't know how to go to many places without Google Maps, right?
for sure. I wouldn't go around the block without looking at the map once.
how many phone numbers you remember by heart, right? Uh,
God,
I mean,
zero.
I used to, but now I am dependent on the phone, right? Uh, so yeah, I think that kind of shift is going to happen. Yeah, whether we like it or not, is going to happen.
But what do you think it frees up memory for? So if there's a block of brain power that was allocated to storing things, and now that doesn't need to happen anymore. Do you think that frees up space for more intellect, or do you think that frees up space for more empathy?
You are thinking like Sherlock Holmes. You you know that story, right?
No, please
So Sherlock
go ahead.
Holmes described to Watson that he only s- uh, remembered what he thinks is important, and he discards everything else so he can have more space in his brain to remember
Mm,
things that are important to him, right?
mhm,
So he would remember, very I would say strange, but non-traditional things, right? That will help serve a purpose to solve the mysteries of the,
yeah.
of the murder or whatever, right? So he will remember crazy things like, the color of a dirt from a specific region and things like that, but he will not remember, the name of one particular person or something that most people would,
Mm,
right? So it's that concept of what you're saying. I, I think that I mean, there is some truth into that, but I think that the brain is malleable. So if we
mm,
do need to remember things and we push ourselves, there is no limit to what we can do, right? Um,
I agree.
do
Yeah.
or learn, right? But it does require a an effort, a conscious effort towards that
Mm.
that place, right?
I do agree.
That
I do agree.
that that
I do
remind.
hope that,
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
sorry, I was going to say, I do hope that, as, as a, global set of people, or as a race, we have some clear goals that, we all want, positive goals that technology can, help us realize. I just hope that with something so powerful, I really hope that, in 20 years when we look back, I just hope that we made the best use of it. Yeah.
Yes, I hope the same. I mean, I my concern is that there's so many interests that that it's hard to find this consensus towards
Mm,
a goal that helps humanity. Uh,
mm,
I like the concept of Star Trek, or these other sci-fi movies where they say, "Oh, we went beyond this concept of resource hoarding, right? Uh, Money is no longer. We don't need money anymore, right? Which
yeah.
sounds great on the movie, but I don't know how that's going to be possible to do in reality, right?
Are
So
you a Star Trek
that
fan?
yes, I love Star
So
Trek.
I'm not really a Star Trek fan. I don't know enough about it, but since you've mentioned it twice, I should tell you that Atrian is actually a type of character in the Star Trek franchise. So
Oh,
Atrians
really?
are a particular species that have like deep listening abilities, and yeah, I guess if you Google uh, Atrian, you'll see.
I'm doing that. Oh, from the original series.
Yeah.
Interesting. The lizard people. Interesting. Now I will have to look it up. Yeah, I have to read more about this. Yeah.
It was just a
Um,
coincidence, yeah.
yeah, interesting. So
But you know, it's interesting how many of our current technological advancements are actually based on, you know, science fiction or futuristic, you know, TV series and whatnot from our childhood. I actually didn't think like I would be seeing so many of those things realized, in my lifetime, and here they are.
yeah, I mean, I think that that is inspiring. Science fiction from the 50s, that's what kind of first started.
Mm,
Um, they they had these crazy dreams about what the world could become, right?
mm.
And by this time we should have flying cars, right? According to to science fiction, right? Yeah. Uh, so I found that very interesting. It's very inspiring, actually. Um,
Yeah.
and even though sometimes they're completely wrong, sometimes they hit it, right? It's a hit and miss, but it is inspiring nevertheless, right? And the person that um, I think talks more about, I need to look up the name of the author because I never remembered.
Asimov?
Asimov, yes, he's the
Isaac
one
Asimov. Yeah.
that talks a lot more about this. I, I want to say dilemma, but struggle between
Mm.
humans and technology, right? Which is kind
Right.
of where you're going with your questions about how
Yeah.
AI is going to change our lives, right? Um, he he even has on one of his books he talks about this concept of this eternal being that a human that becomes eternal by changing part of his body, and then
Mm.
eventually he gets to a point. I'm spoiler alert. Uh, he he was learning with future generations of humans, right? Until
Okay.
he got to a point where uh, everybody else got the new thing, right? Understood, like, the new thing, and he was unable to understand that, right? And that's the moment when he realized that he became obsolete, right? That he
Wow.
was unable to learn new things, right? And he
Mm-hmm.
was unable uh, to keep up with the learn of society, right? He's been uh, helping society and humanity to uh, to improve, right? Because he was at the edge of the technology, because he was, a scientist, and he was, he knew a lot of about a lot of things, and he had so many lives. He has lived so many lives that he has so many experience until he got to that point, and that's kind of where he decided, okay, this is the time where it doesn't make sense for me to keep living because I become obsolete for humanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm probably butchering the story. I'm paraphrasing, but
No,
that's
that
kind
was
of what
really
I
good.
remember. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
But you know what I
so
was
yeah,
thinking through, your narration was in the 50s. If there was a normal, sane person and he was thinking about cars flying someday, that by definition is a hallucination, okay? Because it's because it's not real and there's no way to make it real in the present day, but it's an aberration in thought, right? And I'm thinking, um, will we have models whose job it is just to hallucinate reasonably to try and help us predict what the future looks like? Because it's at the end of the day, it's the job of large language models to have some hallucination, and that's how creativity happens. That's how new words or new sentences or whatever are made up. um, Perhaps if imagination or hallucination was the key to imagining a future and creating pathways for us to build um, how much more of that can happen, using AI? I'd be interested in seeing that.
I haven't thought about it that way. That's very interesting. When I implement, you know, use AI tools and implement them on our workflows, I am boxing. I don't know if boxing is the word, but trying to mold the AI to become deterministic, even though it's a
Exactly.
non-deterministic
Yeah.
thing, right? And now that you're talking about that, I'm realizing, well, why do we have to fight with this, so much? It's because it's non-deterministic. What happens if we, encourage that, right? Wow, that would be something interesting.
See, I think this is something for the next generation to do, because I think usually we would be very cautious with the new technology, as is like it's a very human thing to do that. When you see something new and super powerful, like, hey, we found fire, we're going to be like super careful with that. But the next generation, they're going to try and figure out how to put it on a matchstick, and how to do pyrotechnics and whatnot. I really think, say for instance, okay, 3 years ago, what was the one thing that everybody in the world was thinking about day and night? It was a virus, right?
Right.
It was a pandemic, and it was the COVID virus, and you could not have gone through a single day without thinking about it. Now, let's say hypothetically, 10,000 years ago, a catastrophic event like this would happen once in 10,000 years. Then the incidence rate of that increases to once in 1,000 years. And then the incidence rate increases to once in 100 years. And then it goes to once in 10 years. And now, what if that accelerates to a pace where it happens once every year? It would be highly unfortunate, but I think if microbes, organisms, pathogens can become super bugs and super intelligent bugs much faster, we will need to create a super intelligence that helps us figure out how to deal with it also much faster. When the pandemic happened, as a race, we were out of options, we were out of solutions. We didn't know, how to, sort of counter that, or control that, or treat that, or, manage that. Um, I think one of the best things that might come out of more advanced AI with super super computing powers, maybe dealing with existential threats to humanity, because we're just like at the cusp of how much we can do with our own minds, and how much we can do collectively, as people who put their minds together. But beyond this, I think the problems of the next generation will require very advanced forms of intelligence, and so we're just past that threshold. So I think that could be another thing that would become super useful in the near future. We have no choice, we have to build it.
Right, right. We have to build it. I mean, it becomes a survival situation where either we build it or we perish. Yes,
Yeah,
as
I
as a
guess. Yeah.
humanity, right? Yeah. The there's also something interesting in what you were describing. That, I mean, on all of these uh, crises, right, or on all of these situations like the pandemic, there were a lot of people that died, right, which is unfortunate,
Mhm. Yeah.
but also means that there is a paradigm shift in humanity, right? Because which is kind of what happens with cellular regeneration, right? Now you have an a new cells doing new things, right? Different than
Yeah.
what we used to do before, right? So I think that's going to happen with us as well, right? That um, our rate of change is going um, to generate changes that we couldn't see coming now, right? It's
I
going to
agree.
be a
I
very
totally
interesting
agree.
world.
It is. It is. I hope that we live long enough to see it. But I think it's looking very exciting for the next generation. I just hope that, we leave a world good enough for them to feel that excitement, and to enjoy it and thrive in it. I think when we think about how much of current advances in technology are focused on humans and human comfort and human abilities and human, longevity. I would like perhaps for some parts of, at least 20 to 30% of that, effort to also be dedicated to the rest of our environment surviving and thriving and to be, like enjoyable in the future. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing so much of that right now. But I personally am of the belief that, if the earth is lost, everything is lost, right? Like I would certainly continue to want to see, us as a race on this planet, in living in much better ways. Also like to see maybe like a little more, tech focus on not just our internal systems and us, but, what's around us and how to preserve that and how to make that better. I think that would be interesting to see. Yeah.
Yes, yes, I think that that would be very interesting to see coming. I my concern is the like the other side of this of the coin, right? Or an alternative vision of what you're describing is, before the 2010s, nobody has the kids didn't have any phones, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the level of depression and disconnect that people had that kids had has been increasing since they had cell phones and social networks, right? Because social networks allows people to um, be mean to each other, right? Without the consequence of physically physical uh, being presence. Um, so that generated a generation of kids that became more depressed, right? And less connected with each other. Right now, everybody's on their phones, right? We feel that we have more communication where we are that should connect us more, but in reality is disconnecting us more, right? Um, the level of birth rates is going down, right? Or what happened in Japan that most most kids at 30, not kids anymore, right? But people at 30, they they are they are uh, they are alone. They don't have a partner, right? So they had issues finding partners, right? So my concern is that the AI will take, forward to that direction, right? Why would a kid prefer to date a woman when the kid can date an AI, virtual whatever, virtual woman that it can be uh, molded to be perfect as the kid wants, right? Um, where if you date a woman is going to be less perfect, right, or imperfect, right? So I'm wondering if we're going towards that direction, right? So I was painting this, dark vision, right,
Mm-hmm.
of why would a kid prefer to date a real woman with the imperfections that a real woman would have, where a kid could date a virtual agent, right, that is going to um, become this perfect woman, right, as the kid would want, right, or it's going to give the right answers all the time.
That's interesting. I think if you actually take the physicality out of it, and if you're just, looking for sheer companionship, somewhere in the future, like we saw, in that Spike Jonze film, Her, somewhere in the future there are, virtual people that perhaps become like really good companions to you. In fact, I do believe that a lot of startup founders are working on loneliness as the problem statement right now, and they're trying to solve that using AI, just by building companions for people. And you just mentioned Japan, but I think it's a global pandemic. I think we're
Right.
currently not even thinking about like how big of a problem loneliness is. Our cities are growing and we're becoming bigger and bigger. we're surrounded by so many more people. We have so many more connections, and we've got like social media. And like you mentioned, we're getting lonelier. So I don't know, where this goes, but there's definitely a paradoxical quality to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I describe this, bleak future because, to give contrast, right? But I am hopeful on humanity as a whole that we'll be able to figure it out, right, and adapt to new things, right? Um, and the and yeah, I mentioned Japan because uh, they are a little bit ahead on that curve, right?
Yeah.
So it's a good representation of what you know we on the Western society could become, right?
That's
Um,
true. That's true.
yeah, but then
Yeah.
you know, on the other side, I think that the importance of building these personal connections becomes much more important, right? Um,
Mm,
because we are in a world where we are saturated of information in our phones. We have notifications all the time, right?
mm,
And I don't know if this happens to you, but for me, when I'm like when I'm doing this podcast, I'm 100% focused on being here, right? So um, it requires an additional effort that I'm not used to because we're on the phone all the time multitasking, right?
yeah.
uh, so and you're listening and then you're start like, oh, where's my phone? I got a notification, and and so for me it takes like an extra effort to be here, be present, be with you.
Makes sense. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you remember a few years ago, there was a lot of discussion around, is it called transmorphism or transhumanism? The idea that you can transfer your consciousness, your memories, and sort of all of your thoughts into either some storage device or perhaps a robot or into some other medium. Do you think that people who have the resources will eventually opt for not wanting to exist in this body, but to just maybe exist in another form, like one of these new, robots that's being built, and just say, hey, I'd like to see what it's like in 200 years, but I just want to go through. I don't want to go through that with with sickness and with pain and whatnot. I just don't want the limitations of this body. But if there's a storage media that can store all of my thoughts, and if there's inference engines and reasoning engines that can think the way I think, because that's what makes me unique. And if it can, have just enough hallucinatory power to allow me to imagine, so I'm not robotic, then I might as well continue to exist in that form. Do you think, that's somewhere on the cards?
It's a very interesting concept. Isaac Newton explored that on one of his books where he uh, you know uh, there's a society where changing your organs for a biomechanical device, right,
Hmm.
becomes easier. So they can change your lungs, they can change your liver, they can change, and you can keep living longer and longer, right? And
Right.
they have this trial where they discuss in length about what makes us human, right? How
Mm,
far of organ changing, yeah, are you still human and what not, right? Is you know you had argument of if you change your brain, right? If you don't
mm,
change your brain, then you keep being human. Yeah, but a
mm,
brain is another organ, right? So if you change your brain with a positronic, biomechanical brain, right? Which is kind of what you're describing, right? Well, you're describing a cloning ourselves, right? Like getting uh, which was another thing that we were discussing as well, I believe. Like
yeah.
if you can copy your conscious, right? Now you have two people, right? Are these two people, or is a clone of you, or is just information, right? How
So it's the
are we?
analogy of the ship of Theseus, if you remember, right?
So if you, sorry, which one?
The ship of Theseus. The ship of
Okay.
Theseus. So it's this, I think it's a Greek myth, and
Oh.
the idea is Theseus has a ship, and each of the parts of the ship are, sort of replaced one by one. And so at one point, the ship is completely made of new parts. So is it still the ship of Theseus? Or if you took all the, broken parts that were removed, and if you, sort of turn that into a ship, would that be the ship of Theseus? You know, so I
Where
think
do you draw the
it's
line?
where you draw the
Yeah,
line.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
how much of me actually makes me human? Like if you replace every organ in my body, is it just my brain that makes me human? Or if you replace my brain, but my mind, my consciousness, my projection of my ego is still intact, do I continue to be me? Where does identity come from? I think that's the question. That's the question. Where does our sense of self, our ego? That's a very important question to ask. In fact, I constantly think about the impact that generative AI is going to have on the subject of ethics and morality, and how much of our ethical and moral, base is going to be affected by it. I think those are conversations that need to be had. I think those conversations are just starting. And if you ask me, when I was growing up, you know, the same conversations were had about, say, MTV, like how's MTV going to affect our morality? And then it was, the internet, and how does internet affect, how we, conduct ourselves as human beings. But I don't think it has ever been this drastic. What AI is forcing us to think about, or what AI is asking us to, reconsider entirely, when it comes to ethics and morals and interhuman relationships and connectedness, and what is our barometer, where questions to ask. Um, in fact, some of those early indicators are already there, where people are saying, hey, if you go to, let's say, all the Reddit comments that I've made and all the Twitter comments that I've made, and you train a model on it, should that model's output be my intellectual property or not? You know, and
Right.
that's like a very obvious question. And it's not. Most models, or most outputs are actually trained on human inputs. Most of the training data for all the large language models, it wasn't machine generated. I'm pretty sure that it was scraped off of the known internet, and things that people have written on the internet, and people have published on the internet. But people are now going to economically benefit from the outcomes of that training data, without actually providing credit or citations, or even passing on the economic benefit to the people who've provided the training data. And that, I think, it's a new time, in tech history. And I don't know how this works, and how to think about it. That is something that we need to figure out going forward.
Very interesting. Yes, I agree. It's a conversation worthwhile to have. Yeah.
Uh,
So, Sharif, we're running out of time. We should wrap it up. But if you're open, we should do another book another time so we can continue exploring this conversation.
That sounds good. Yes, I would love to do that.
Right. Thank you very much, Sharif, for being here.
Thanks a lot, Federico. It was a good conversation, and I'm very happy to have been here. And if you're interested in what AI can do for decisions in particular, right? Um, Please go check out Atrean, which is the company that I'm currently working on. I happen to be the founder and CEO of this platform called Atrean, and Atrean, builds decision intelligence. We're currently focused on investment teams and private capital markets in the United States. But obviously, it's a very broad platform, and we cater to a lot of different kinds of companies. Especially ones that focus heavily on research and development. And please do go check it out, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around this. And you can be assured that most of the conversations that we've had in the little time that we spent, I've tried to think of, my team and I, we've tried to think of a lot of those conversations and those subjects while we were building Atrean. So it's an extension of our thoughts in a way.
Yeah, we didn't have much time to explore what Atrean do, so I apologize for that. Um, I the way that I can summarize what I understand Atrean's doing, and let me know if that's correct. But you have this role of hunter and gatherer, right? So the hunter goes and hunt, right, and then the gatherer is the one that it's like organizing the stuff, right? So I understand Atrean helps you organize the data, the information. So you as a hunter can say, let's go that way. And, you can have this higher level of inquiries, right? Or ask, specific questions. And then Atrean would do the hard work of an, analyzing gathering the data, analyzing it, everything, and then bring it back to you, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Great, great. Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you, Federico. Thank you.